Alright, I've got another Warhammer 40,000 book review for all of you today, and the subject of this video will be the Masters of the Hunt stories, centered around the WhiteScars Space Marines. Now for those of you who don't know, to put it simply with the WhiteScars, they're equivalent to Mongolian hunters, but on motorcycles. Their whole tactics are to strike hard, strike fast, and to seek out their target with any means possible. I gotta tell you guys, this is actually the first time I've reviewed an omnibus for a while. I haven't reviewed a Warhammer omnibus since Nexus when I first started this channel, so I'm actually pretty psyched to talk about some of the stories I've read here, the ones that definitely stood out. So, let's get started, shall we? So first up, we have Hunt for Voldorius by Andy Hoare. I gotta tell you guys, this one hit all the right marks, because not only was this a Space Marine versus Chaos Space Marine story, which is something I hadn't seen in like a while, but not only that, it was essentially the WhiteScars fighting the Alpha Legion, one of the traitor Space Marines that isn't talked about that much, as far as I'm aware. And so I was actually pretty psyched to read this one, and it was one of the first pieces in this omnibus. So, our story centers around the Master of the Hunt, known as Corsaro Khan of the WhiteScars, and his hunt for Voldorius, a demon prince of the Alpha Legion Space Marines. And I really liked the story, how it kept it simple, how it kept it clean of what it is. It's a mission to hunt down this target. And cool fact about the WhiteScars, when they have a list of people that they hunt, the person that they are tracking, if they manage to take down the target, they will take the head of their enemy, drag it back to their home planet of Chagoris, cover it in silver, and then hang it in the Hall of Trophies, which I thought was freaking badass as hell. So, Corsaro was definitely an interesting character. His whole focus was just wiping out Voldorius, but it was for a good reason. Voldorius' crime is that he had used a massive super weapon called the Blood Tide, which had wiped out an entire sector of civilians seemingly overnight, or near instantly. So this whole entire story was pretty straightforward. Corsaro Khan tracks Voldorius down, and the first half of it, we think he's got him, but then it is revealed, no, it was in fact a trap. However, eventually they are able to finally track down where Voldorius would actually be hiding. And so, at that time, what they do next, they track him down to the next world, but during their campaign, they actually run across the Raven Guard, another Space Marine chapter that focuses on stealth and assassination, similar to the Night Lords, but they are loyalist. And it was actually pretty cool seeing two rare Space Marine chapters, such as the WhiteScars and the Raven Guard, get the spotlight in a story. I thought that was really cool, especially watching them team up despite their differences. So yeah, this one was actually pretty good. It does function as a standalone novel by itself, and in fact it is available to purchase if you just want this one story. But I would say if you want this whole with the package, go for it. I will say though this novel was a bit of a drag to get through at like 200 or so pages, but it still managed to keep my attention all the way through, and prevented me from skimming through. So, let's move on to the next story. Next up, we have The Last Hunt by Raleigh McNiven, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name. But The Last Hunt was definitely one I was not expecting whatsoever, especially considering who the main enemy of this was. Essentially, it was WhiteScars versus Tyranids. I gotta tell you guys, I was so happy to finally get a Tyranid story to read, because up until then, my whole entire collection of stories that I had read involved chaos to a great extent, and a minority of orcs. But rarely have I ever read a Tyranid story, and this one struck all the chords, and I was super happy to finally get through it. So, the premise of this story is that Jogatan Khan is leading his troop of Space Marines to defend a shield world of the WhiteScars known as Darkened, because apparently a section of Hive Fleet Leviathan has broken off from the main fleet and is now about to assault this world that they have sworn to protect. And I gotta tell you guys, I did not know what to expect with this one other than just a survival horror style of story. with the WhiteScars fighting desperately to survive against the Tyranids, which we did get that. But more than that, we got Gene Stealers, we got the Eldar helping out in their own way. Hell, we even got the Dark Eldar, even for a brief time. So during this whole entire story, as they are defending Darkened, Jolgotten and his Psyker within his field are both contacted by the Eldar, who are stating that they can possibly help if they help take out an enemy of theirs, which happens to be a Dark Elf warrior that had beheaded one of their previous chapter masters years ago. So in other words, this would be a chance for personal revenge on Jolgotten's part. So in actuality, at first they refused, but then when it seemed like all hope was lost, the Tyranids were about to win, and then they finally found out that there are Gene Stealers running around. It's almost too late. The city is about to fall. The planet is about to be devoured. So Jolgotten ends up taking this time to finally agree to the Eldar's wishes when their backs are against the wall. So eventually they are led into the webway where they confront the Dark Eldar, take off their head, and gain vengeance for the death of one of their chapter masters. Before then, the Eldar is able to cast an ability to essentially create a time way, a way for them all to go back in time to track down the Gene Stealers and destroy them, and thus defeating the Tyranids to a much greater degree. And I gotta tell you guys, that alone really caught my interest, how they were able to go back in time, be practically unseen by everybody, and were able to take out the Gene Stealer hive mind, or the Gene Stealer tyrant. Which, I gotta tell you guys, for the first time I'd ever experienced a Tyranid novel, this one was definitely a must-read. This is also available as a standalone book itself, but reading this and finally being able to get not only Space Marines fighting the Alpha Legion, but having Space Marines fighting Tyranids, I immediately knew that this collection was a good one to pick up, because it managed to hit just the right spots that I had been craving from Warhammer for a while. So with that, let's go on to the third story, and let me tell you all about it. Last but certainly not least, we got Hunter's Snare by Josh Reynolds. And this one was actually a novella part of the omnibus, and this one definitely took me by surprise with the fact that it was the WhiteScars fighting the Tau Empire. Again, something I had not read before. So, after the Hunt for Voldorius, Last Hunt, and even this one here, Hunter's Snare, and the novella before this, they really checkmarked the boxes of what I had been craving from Warhammer for a while. I wanted to see Space Marines fighting Tau. I wanted to see Space Marines fighting Tyranids, or a different faction of Chaos. I got all of that in this collection, but Hunter's Snare was a really damn good story. It had me hooked from start to finish, and I loved it. So here, we actually see the return of Corsaro Khan in pursuit of another quarry, Shadow Son of the Tau Empire. And I love how these two, Shadow Son of the Tau and Corsaro Khan, they wind up respecting each other for how they're both hunters of their respective species. They respect each other for having that hunting spirit. And I gotta tell you guys, at one point during their final showdown, when they have a discussion about what could have been, how if there were more peaceful times, they could have sat down over a glass of wine and just talked about their adventures, their hunts, everything else. That possible friendship they could have had. Which really lends a sad note to Warhammer in itself. In this whole galaxy divided, there really possibly is no chance for peace. You literally have, in the time stream right now, you have the galaxy is completely split apart. You've got the Tau on one side, you have the Tyranids trying to devour everything, you have the Imperium of Man essentially being outnumbered and almost completely outgunned. You have the Chaos Marines running more rampant than ever, and Chaos Demons are just popping up everywhere across the galaxy. So is there a chance for peace? I don't really know. But having this realization of these two hunters respecting one another, whilst facing each other in combat, and essentially talking about what could have been, it was a really somber note to read as I was going through this collection, and it actually took me by surprise with that. To think that these two would have been friends, an alien and one of the Imperium. So, Hunter's Snare was definitely good, because Shadowsun was a worthy rival to the WhiteScars, and especially to Corsaro, because she really tested him. Like, at one point during the beginning of the story, we think, oh, they've got this, they're definitely going to take him down. But no, Shadowsun actually leads Corsaro and the WhiteScars into a trap, which that really surprised me. But then after that, it's more or less just fighting for survival, and let me tell you, the WhiteScars almost got completely stomped by the Tau. If there's one thing Shadowsun was good at, she was good at being an effective commander. And honestly, watching these two rivals going at each other was a fun read. Their final fight, how the WhiteScars managed to win at the last second, was just absolutely phenomenally written. Josh Reynolds really outdid himself here. But let's move on to the final score, shall we? So all in all, I will give Masters of the Hunt a very solid 10 out of 10. Not for the least of which being able to scratch off a lot of stuff and stories that I've wanted to read for a while. Not only just Space Marines fighting Chaos, but Space Marines fighting Tyranids, Space Marines fighting the Tau Empire. This single omnibus was so diverse in the many enemies that the Imperium faced, and it's the WhiteScars themselves with their various culture, their whole idea of the hunt, and everything that they are about. Hell, even the great respect they have for their Primarch, Jagatai Khan. This really brought the WhiteScars into more of a positive limelight. And now it kind of makes me sad that I don't see them often on the tabletop that much. But if you guys are interested in checking them out for yourselves, I would highly recommend you pick up Masters of the Hunt for yourselves. And it's definitely a much smaller book than some of the other collections that I've seen of Space Marine stories. And I'll definitely be diving more into omnibuses from now on to cover more chapter-based stories. But all in all, once again, solid 10 out of 10 for Masters of the Hunt, and I cannot wait for the next Warhammer book that I pick up. Anyways, you guys, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much again for listening to this crazy man's ramblings. And if you have any other book suggestions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Or if not, just leave a like, leave a comment telling me good job, and subscribe if you're interested for more. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for listening again. This is the Rambling Collector, signing off.